Good morning. This is Northern Light for Friday, April 28th, Arbor Day. I'm Todd Moe. Monica has the day off. Nearly a month after the state budget was due, Governor Hochul says she's reached a conceptual agreement with the legislature on a new spending plan.
We're at a point where the major decisions have been made. There's obviously fine-tuning that has to be done. That'll be worked out over the weekend, but literally bills can start being printed. And we're on a path to shutting down the budget process.
More schools in the North Country are getting interested in putting local produce on kids' lunch trays, but buying directly from farmers is complicated. Some school superintendents are trying to partner with local farmers now at the start of the growing season.
There are some local farms now that have more trust in some of the schools or institutions. That's the big difference right now.
When we start purchasing local, I really want to celebrate that it's local and our heritage, and maybe fold in some Native American dishes, because we have students from Akwesasne.
Also, how therapy dogs can help young people learn to read. And we'll talk with the Ontario author of the book To Speak for the Trees on this Arbor Day. All that's coming up on Northern Light. Stay tuned. Broadcast of Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio is supported by Barstow Subaru, Potsdam, committed to the safety and security of all-wheel drive. Details at barstowsubaru.com. And by Adirondack Foundation, helping people and families build a legacy of generosity for the Adirondacks, adirondackfoundation.org. This is Northern Light. I'm Todd Moe. Congress is setting up for a showdown on raising the debt ceiling, and the North Country's representatives are on both sides of the battle. Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik and Claudia Tenney voted for the Limit, Save, and Grow Act yesterday in the House, which scales back federal spending while raising the debt limit by $1.5 trillion or through March of next year, whichever comes first. Tenney explained her vote in a call with constituents on Wednesday night.
The student loan giveaway that Biden put out, $465 billion we can save on that. There's a ton of areas that we saw that we can cut, at least trim, so that we bring our deficit back in place. We respect the taxpayers. We respect the fact that we shouldn't be funding everything. We need to fund the things where we have true needs.
But New York Senator and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer told reporters Wednesday the Republicans' plan is dead on arrival for Democrats.
Bottom line, the Extreme House plan is a gut punch to upstate families, a gut punch to upstate jobs, a gut punch to our economy. It might as well be called the Default on America Act, because that's exactly what it is, DOA, dead on arrival.
Schumer also raised concerns that the Republican bill would cut billions of dollars in federal science funding. He says would prevent STEM workers from getting training for major technology projects across upstate New York. Governor Kathy Hochul announced last night that she's reached a conceptual agreement with legislative leaders on the state budget, which is nearly a month late. As Karen DeWitt reports, Hochul says bills could be printed as soon as next week.
Hochul called the news conference a couple of hours after senators and assembly members left the Capitol for the weekend, saying there were too many unresolved issues to approve a spending plan this week. The governor, who appeared alone without the two Democratic legislative leaders, says there was sufficient agreement with the legislature on major items to announce the conceptual accord.
We agreed that we're at a point where the major decisions have been made. There's obviously fine-tuning that has to be done. That'll be worked out over the weekend, but literally bills can start being printed. And we're on a path to shutting down the budget process.
The governor had to give up some core elements of her agenda, including a plan to build 800,000 new housing units over the next decade. She blamed the legislature for resisting elements of the plan that would have allowed the state to override local zoning laws. But she says they will try again in the remaining weeks of the session. Hochul did achieve one of her top priorities. She convinced lawmakers to make more changes to the state's controversial controversial bail reform laws. It will give judges more power to set bail in cases of serious crimes by eliminating a requirement that they seek the least restrictive means to ensure a defendant comes back for court dates. Hochul says that clause was leading to a higher recidivism rate.
The agreement removes what is known as the least restrictive means standard, which many judges have said tied their hands. It gives judges discretion. They need to hold violent criminals accountable.
The governor had sought the opening of 100 additional charter schools. The final agreement will yield 22 schools. Existing public schools will receive a record $24 billion in state aid, finally fulfilling a court order that requires all schools to be fairly funded. The legislature did not agree to a proposal by Hochul to raise tuition at public colleges and universities. The governor says there's agreement to raise the state's minimum wage to $17 an hour and tie future increases to the rate of inflation. And there's accord on a plan to help curb climate change. It includes a ban on gas hookups of new homes by 2025 and for all new buildings by 2028. It also includes $400 million in subsidies to low-income households struggling to pay utility bills and to help upgrade to more energy-efficient heating systems. And Hochul says the budget includes new powers for state agencies to close down illegal cannabis shops operating across the state. The governor says they are unfairly competing with the emerging state-created legal marijuana industry, where just 5 retail outlets are currently allowed to sell the drug.
They weren't even able to allow to do searches because we only had civil penalties and not criminal penalties.
The agencies would have the authority to conduct searches and seizure of illegal products and impose fines and bring criminal charges under the state's tax laws. Representatives for Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie and Senate Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins confirmed that a conceptual agreement has been reached on the spending plan, but they did not say why the leaders were not at the announcement. They also could not immediately provide a timetable for when bills might be voted on. An Assembly spokesman also offered the caveat that while there is an overall accord, the details of many issues remain unresolved. In Albany, I'm Karen DeWitt.
More schools in the North Country are getting interested in putting local fruits and vegetables on kids' lunch trays. But buying food directly from farmers is more complicated than buying from big food companies. Making plans at the beginning of the growing season, so right now, is critical. Lizzie Grindon went to a farm in St. Lawrence County for a meeting between a farmer and school officials.
Cherie Witten is showing the Parishville School Superintendent, Stephen Coffin, around the Witten family farm in Winthrop, about halfway between Potsdam and Messina.
You want to go back in the hot greenhouse? Or
sure.
Yeah.
The greenhouse feels like a sauna inside. Tables of little green seedlings fill the building.
We have a lot of brassicas in here. Broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, kohlrabi.
Before too long, another school official pokes her head through the door.
Hi, Kristen.
Kristen Colarusso-Martin is the food service director for the Messina Central School District. She and Coffin are both here to talk about how the school districts might partner with Witten's farm to get local food on kids' plates. Coffin says public school food policies mostly facilitate buying food from big companies, not small farms.
We're looking at how to circumvent that to better set us up so we can do these purchases next year.
Their goal is to set up partnerships where they tell farmers what they want to buy in the spring, so the farmers have enough time to plant more for the schools. Last fall, Messina and Parishville both bought some produce for school lunches from local farms. But because they didn't plan and discuss that months in advance, there just wasn't a lot of produce left to sell to the schools, Witten says.
What was actually left available for you was a lot less than what hopefully will be this year, when we're able to plan together and decide what we should focus on for crops.
That's why they're having this conversation, sitting around the dining room table in the Witten family's farmhouse. Coffin and Colarusso-Martin say things will be different this year.
We're not planning in a vacuum anymore. These conversations have started, and there are some local farms now that have more trust in some of the schools or institutions. So they're going to make the commitment. That's the big difference right now.
Cherie is, guaranteeing to try to plant the things that we need. We in turn need to be able to purchase them from her to not leave her high and dry with, 40 pounds of carrots.
There are still potential hurdles, like the fact that a lot of school kitchens aren't equipped to deal with real food.
Kitchens right now are not designed for fresh produce.
Coffin says kitchen staff are used to working with frozen, prepackaged meals that just get popped into an oven.
We literally had to buy knives for our kitchen.
And on the farmer's side of things, planting a huge amount of one crop for a large institutional buyer like a school is a big commitment. But Whitten and the 2 school district reps see a lot of potential good that could come out of a partnership. Colarusso Martin says it's partly about pride of place for the students.
When we start purchasing local, I really want to celebrate that it's local and our heritage and, maybe fold in some Native American dishes, because we have students from Akwesasne.
A handful of schools, like Saranac Lake, have been trying to do this for years, and it's starting to catch on more widely. Whitten says she helped put together a bid from farmers in the area last week to sell produce to schools in Essex County. Coffin says as poverty increases, access to local organic foods decreases. Individual families may not always have the purchasing power or the time to provide local food. So public school lunches may be the best way to make sure kids get it.
More than likely, schools are going to be in the best position to provide local food to kids rather than individual homes.
Buying from local farms also keeps more money in the North Country economy. Colarusso Martin estimates that the food budget just for Massena's 5 schools is about $1 million a year. The Massena School District is the largest in St. Lawrence County, with 2,500 students. Parishville is one of the smallest, with around 300 students in one school building.
You got the largest district in St. Lawrence County and one of the smallest districts in St. Lawrence County.
Both of us were here at the table.
Which is great, because if it works for both of us, it'll work for any district.
No deals have been finalized yet, but the school districts hope to reach deals with farmers like Whitten soon. Lucy Grindon, North Country Public Radio, Winthrop.
Get more news all the time at ncpr.org. You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It is 13 minutes past 8. Good morning. I'm Todd Moe. Monica Sandreski has the day off. Stay tuned. On this Arbor Day, we'll listen to the story of Ontario author and scientist Diana Beresford Kroger's love for trees and forests. This is music by Kingston, Ontario musician David Archibald. Check out more of his music on our website. He's part of the Underscore Project. You'll find more at ncpr.org/underscore. Northern Light is supported by Cloud Splitter Foundation, recognizing the work of Cornell Cooperative Extension of Essex County and their programs connecting local farmers to their communities and schools. More at essex.cce.cornell.edu. The Vermont legislature passed reproductive and gender-affirming health care bills yesterday with a late addition aimed at protecting access to a medication widely used in abortions, even if the U.S. Food and Drug Administration withdraws its approval of the pill mifepristone. The bills protect providers from discipline for providing legally protected reproductive and gender-affirming health care services. Vermont lawmakers recently tacked on medicated abortion to the definition of legally protected reproductive health care services and believe the state is the first to do so. Fort Drum is starting a new program to help military spouses find jobs. It's called the Military Spouse Career Accelerator Pilot Program, and it'll offer 12-week paid fellowships so that spouses can try out private sector jobs. There's already a program like this for service members. When they're about 6 months out from leaving the military, they can get paid internships to help them make that transition. But this is the first time Fort Drum will have a dedicated paid fellowship opportunity for service members' spouses. The military spouse unemployment rate is currently about 22%. Jefferson County will be hiring a housing director whose main job will be to address homelessness. County legislators passed a resolution to create the new position earlier this week, according to WWNY-TV. The county community services director said the new employee will work on projects like the county's planned pallet shelter, a collection of small individual dwellings, each about as the size of a shed. It'll be a few more months before the hiring process for the new housing director is complete. Learning how to read is a big hurdle for young kids. It can be daunting to sound out words, especially in front of other kids at school. Crandall Public Library in Glens Falls designed a program for kids to practice reading to therapy dogs. The next session is this afternoon at 3:30 and again on Monday at 5 p.m. As part of our ongoing library series, we'll listen back to a piece Emily Russell produced in 2020 from a kids' reading session at Crandall Public Library.
I'm Brody, and I'm 6 years old.
Who is this?
My brother, he's Zach, and he's 3 years old.
Okay, and Brody, what are you reading today?
My global address, and then Wake Up Sun.
There you go. Sit. She's a standard poodle, and her name's Ellie. And this is Wampin Willow.
I like your name, Wampin Willow.
Everybody likes it. I love these kids, and it's so much fun to see them start off with just a very simple book. And it is just calming for them. And they just sit here and pet them and have a good time.
Good girl. You stay. My global address. I live in a house. My house is on a street.
Brody's doing it because he has to practice his reading each night, and he loves the dogs, and we thought it would be a great experience for everyone. I'm Lori Havens, and I'm Brody and Zach's grandmother.
Look said dog. Farmers, baby woke up the sun.
There you go. Good job, guys.
So this is Ellie, and what is her name again?
Wampin Willow.
That was Brody and his grandmother, Lori Havens, along with Darlene Dorr and her dogs, Ellie and Wampin Willow. That piece was produced by Emily Russell and first aired back in 2020. And you can see all the upcoming therapy dog reading sessions at Crandall Public Library's online calendar. You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe. Monica will be back on Monday. In just a minute, outdoors and trail conditions for this weekend from John Warren. And after that, Arbor Day and one Ontario woman's love for trees. The Weather Service has a mix of sun and clouds in the forecast today. Highs this afternoon, mid to upper 60s. Light winds out of the southeast. Clouds and some light rain possible tonight. Lows in the 40s. About an 80-90% chance of light rain on Saturday. Highs tomorrow, low 50s. East winds 15 to 20 miles per hour. Sunday, also about a 90% chance of rain. Sunday and Monday, with highs in the 60s on Sunday, highs in the 50s on Monday. And right now we have partly sunny skies, 49 degrees here in Canton. But here with a look at outdoor conditions for the Adirondacks for the weekend is John Warren.
It looks like we're in for a nice day today, but a windy and rainy weekend, with the highest summits mostly in the clouds, and the possibility of a little light snow Saturday afternoon on high peak summits, as temperatures there fall into the lower 30s. Winds are expected to be up to 35 or 40 miles per hour this weekend, with wind chills on summits mostly in the teens into next week. There remains some snow above about 2,500 feet, and everywhere trails will be icy and or muddy this weekend. Also expect blowdown. The mud season advisory remains in effect, so stick to trails below 2,500 feet and expect to encounter a range of conditions, including winter conditions with freezing temperatures. There could be some considerable snow at the highest elevations early next week. Waters are generally high. The whitewater rafting has been very good. The Hudson River is expected to be around 5 feet at the gauge in North Creek on Saturday. The Racket River at Piercefield, where the flood stage is about 12.5 feet, is now at around 9 feet. The gauge on Lake Champlain, just north of Whitehall, is at 99 feet and will be rising this week. That's just a foot off the 100-foot flood stage there. Waters remain cold, and PFDs are still required by law for anyone in a small boat. Upper Saranac Lake is in the lower 40s. Mirror Lake in Lake Placid is in the upper 40s, and the water temperature of Lake George will be about 40 degrees this weekend. The upper locks on Saranac Lake will be closed to boat traffic May 2nd to May 4th for maintenance. Paddlers can carry around the locks. And the Lake Placid boat launch will be closed from May 8th to May 12th. The Lake Flower boat launch in Saranac Lake has reopened, however, after being closed for the past couple days. And a reminder that the gate on the access road to the Bog River Dam, that's Lowe's Lower Dam, is closed this year to allow for dam maintenance. And finally this week, a reminder to keep an eye on the weather and be prepared for the worst conditions. Weather can change quickly and unexpectedly at this time of year, especially as we head into next week, when continued showers and cooler temperatures are expected. Those are the outdoor conditions in the Adirondacks this weekend. For North Country Public Radio, this is John Warren from the New York Almanac, online at newyorkalmanac.com.
When Ontario scientist and author Diana Beresford Kroger was orphaned, she was taken under the wings of her Irish relatives. She learned about the Brehon laws, gardening, and nature. She was taught that trees and forests are fundamental to human survival and spirituality. In her book, To Speak for the Trees, she traces her life growing up in Ireland and bringing her education in Celtic plant lore with her as she furthered her education and love of trees in Canada. It's a story about trauma, trees, and a global forest plan. She says forests, walk in the woods, forest bathing can heal us physically and mentally and save the planet from climate change. Diana Beresford Kroger lives among the trees in Merrickville, Ontario, just north of the St. Lawrence River. She's a renowned botanist, medical biochemist, and author. And as it is Arbor Day today, I thought it would be fun to listen back to my conversation with her about her book and lifelong love of trees.
It started in a way that was probably very strange. I was fascinated by trees, even as a 5-year-old. And I sought out the people who knew about them. And I didn't want to know the name of the tree. Yes, I did in English, but I wanted to know the Latin name. I wanted it to be correct. And I thought really every child needed to know that. So I went around collecting all of those things, and I hammered them into my head. And then I just kind of kept going. And the big thing, of course, I talk about in the book is that I remember I was probably about 11, and I was helping with turf digging in the Valley of Lachines, where my family had a farm, and my cousin was digging with a shlom. That's the name of a turf digging implement, and he was down in the ditches. I mean, he was at the mine face, and he dug out a piece of Irish oak. And I thought it was a skull. I mean, every kid thinks, oh my goodness, this is a skeleton. This is wonderful. There are going to be legs and arms and all kinds of things coming up with this. No, it wasn't. It was just a great big piece of Quercus robur, of Irish oak. And it was sloppy and full of tannins and dirty and everything. And he shoveled it up to the top of the face of the cutting face and had me look at it. And I looked around. There wasn't a sight of a tree anywhere in the whole valley. Up in the mountains, the Caha Range, Dowas, Douchel and Sheha, all these mountains didn't have a single tree on them. And I said to Patrick, I said, he was called Pat Lachines, I said to Pat, where are all the trees? And he said to me, Diana, we have dug up the last of the ancient forest of Ireland. You see it in front of you. And that was a shocking thing to me. I thought, what are the birds going to do? What are the creatures going to do? Every species has about 40 insect species connected with it. What happened? And that really was part of my life's journey from then on. And the bog oak was just enormous. And, of course, Pat was very sarcastic about what had happened. As long as there were Irish rebels living in Ireland for 500 years, the trees were cut down because they hid in the trees. And take the forest down and you reveal what you have in culture. Destroy a culture, you destroy the forest. You go the forest first, then the language, then the culture. So that's a common story all over the world. It really, truly is, even today. So, well, that was the beginning of my education, really. That was the beginning of my thinking about it, and that was the beginning of me stirring the pot a little bit.
What are you growing on your farm in Merrickville? As an advocate for trees, I'm assuming you have stands and groves of trees on your property?
Yes. What I have here is I have a research garden. And what I have here is an arboretum of the rarest trees of North America. I have a tree called Petilia trifoliata crucidifolia. It is the one tree that exists. It's not even down in the Arnold Arboretum because they were cut down by some vandals. That tree is the sacred tree of the First Nations, and it carries very, very important medicine for the future. I have the cucumber tree. I have all of the carria, all of the hickory species that the Aboriginal people relied on for their food in the past. I have all kinds of rare trees, and I'm breeding them, and I'm crossing them, and I'm doing all kinds of interesting stuff about them. I have a North American medicine walk. I am keeping and have kept for over 40 years all of the beans of the First Nations that were representative of the three sisters for food on the continent. So I have an ark, like a Noah's Ark.
Do you have a copy of the book with you?
Yep.
Did you write the poem that's on that page right before the introduction, Brihan?
Oh, of course I did, yeah.
Would you do us a favor and would you read it to us? I'd love to hear it in your voice.
I would be honored to do that. The title of the poem is Brehon, and that's after the Brehon laws, so I'm starting now. Brehon. The countryside of Éire has been put to sleep with poetry long ago. Fado, fado. The land is murmuring. Soft fields of dreams move slowly, filled with hares and long-tailed grass. Mountains stained with purple heathers and foxes fevered with glints of yellow furs. Woodland words, ragged with rain, between the corncrake sky and the fishtail sounds sucking up the sea. The yoke of the moon will shield the laws of liberty. Arish, August Arish, pointing us straight to Brehon.
Well, Diana Beersford Kruger, thank you so much for sharing your words and sharing to speak for the trees. It was a real honor to speak with you.
Well, it's always my pleasure because I hear you every day. Todd.
That's Diana Beersford Kroger, who lives among the trees in Merrickville, Ontario, just north of the St. Lawrence River. She's a renowned botanist, medical biochemist, and author. And since it's Arbor Day, I thought it would be appropriate to listen again to her conversation about her book, To Speak for the Trees. That'll do it for Northern Light for this Friday, April 28th. Have a great weekend. I'm Todd Moe. Be well.